The moment Yara opened that letter, the color drained from her face. Jovi stood frozen, staring at the words that could tear their entire family apart. A simple piece of paper, a missing signature, suddenly held the power to change everything. Could one paper really destroy this family? Every heartbeat felt louder in that small room, every second stretching into a nightmare that neither of them could escape. Yara clutched Mila close, whispering reassurances she didn't even believe herself, while Jovi's mind raced, imagining the worst-case scenario he refused to say out loud. Tears threatened to spill, but there was no time for them. Not now. Not when the clock was ticking against them. The reality of deportation wasn't some distant possibility anymore. It was on the doorstep, staring them in the face, and there was no clear way out. Every call to the lawyer seemed to raise more questions than answers. Every delay a hammer blow to their hopes. Friends and family offered advice, but no one could truly understand the weight of knowing the system might rip them apart. Could love, hope, and desperation be enough to keep this family together? Or was this the moment where everything they had built would crumble? One misstep, one unsigned page, and their lives could be scattered across continents. The fear in their eyes told a story words could barely capture, but this was just the beginning. What happens next could change their lives forever, and you will not believe the chaos that follows. The tension between Yara and Jovi wasn't sudden. It had been simmering under the surface for months, a quiet storm of miscommunications, unmet expectations, and subtle betrayals. Fans might remember the way small disagreements in their last episode snowballed into full-blown arguments, like when Jovi made offhand remarks about Yara's appearance, and she shut down completely, retreating into herself. On the surface, they smiled for the cameras, laughed at jokes, and pretended everything was fine, but anyone paying attention could see the cracks. Yara's emotional withdrawal wasn't laziness or indifference, it was exhaustion from constantly having to navigate Jovi's moods while keeping Mila's world intact. And Jovi, for his part, wasn't a villain. He was frustrated, scared, and desperate to maintain control in a situation that was quickly spinning beyond his grasp. The episode opens with Yara pacing the living room, clutching her phone like it held the answers to questions no one had yet asked. Every notification makes her flinch. Every email from the lawyer feels like a ticking time bomb. She keeps asking herself if she's doing enough, if she could have prevented the paperwork disaster before it even started. Jovi hovers nearby, trying to project calm, but his tension is palpable. He keeps repeating tasks, checking forms, and reminding Yara about deadlines. But the more he pushes, the more anxious she becomes. Miscommunication here isn't just a minor irritation, it's a spark in a room full of dry tinder. Arguments erupt over the smallest things: a missing document, an unclear instruction, or even a misunderstood tone. Yara interprets Jovi's stress as blame, while he feels like he's carrying the weight of the family on his shoulders alone. The emotional disconnect becomes a cycle. She withdraws, he pressures, she reacts, he escalates, and all of it intensifies the underlying fear that Mila could lose stability if the legal situation collapses. Their behaviors reflect more than personality clashes. They're amplified by exhaustion, lack of sleep, and the high stakes of immigration bureaucracy. It's easy to judge from the outside, but living every day with the possibility that your home and family could be ripped apart changes the rules entirely. On social media, fans have been speculating for weeks about whether this is just a phase or something deeper. Some point to Jovi's efforts to control every detail as overbearing, while others sympathize, seeing a father terrified of losing his daughter's stability. Yara's subtle withdrawal isn't weakness, it's an instinctive protective mechanism, shielding herself and Mila from repeated disappointments. Each scene from the past episode, whether it was a quiet sigh during breakfast or a tense moment over the laundry, now reads like foreshadowing. Every minor incident adds weight to today's crisis, where the looming threat of deportation makes even the smallest misstep feel catastrophic. But here's where it gets wild. Just when the family starts to brace themselves for normal chaos, the USCIS deadline looms like a dark cloud. And it's not just a routine form, they're missing a critical signature. Panic sets in instantly. Yara freezes at the thought of her world unraveling, imagining herself being pulled away from Mila, while Jovi's frustration bubbles into sharp, urgent commands, pushing her even further toward emotional overload. This is more than paperwork. It's a high-stakes emotional battlefield where every decision, every word, and every reaction counts. Fans watching this moment can feel the tension crackling through the screen. Behaviorally, what's happening here is classic stress amplification. Miscommunication triggers a defensive response, which then escalates because both parties are operating under fear and pressure. Yara interprets Jovi's anxiety as criticism, and he interprets her withdrawal as non-cooperation. It's a feedback loop of escalating tension, and it only intensifies as the deadline approaches. For viewers, it's both relatable and unbearable, watching a family teeter on the edge, unable to pause or reset. At the same time, subtle moments hint at their humanity. Jovi checks Mila's homework before storming off to deal with forms, trying to protect normalcy amidst chaos. Yara forces herself to smile when she hears Mila laugh, even though inside she's bracing for disaster. These little behaviors show that despite the conflict, love is still present. They're just trapped in a high-stakes environment that magnifies every flaw. The past context, the small betrayals, and the emotional disconnects all converge here, creating a volatile mix. Every glance, every sigh, every whispered comment carries the weight of months of tension. And now, with the USCIS deadline approaching, the stakes couldn't be higher. Will Yara and Jovi manage to navigate the paperwork in time? Or is the weight of past missteps about to explode in the worst possible way? The next few hours could define whether this family stays together or starts falling apart in ways they never imagined. Yara's anxiety didn't just vanish with the morning sun. Every sound, every knock on the door, every notification on her phone felt like a potential threat. Weeks of emotional neglect, subtle digs, and unspoken criticisms had left her hyper-aware of conflict, like walking on glass barefoot. Jovi, on the other hand, seemed oblivious to the intensity of her internal world. His focus was practical. Forms, signatures, deadlines, but in trying to control the situation, he inadvertently trampled on her fragile emotional state. Every time he raised his voice or pushed her to act faster, it wasn't just frustration, it became a trigger, reopening old wounds and childhood insecurities Yara had carried silently for years. Mila, the ever-observant child, picked up on tension like a radar. She hovered between curiosity and fear, unsure if she should speak up or retreat. Watching her parents argue over documents, deadlines, and miscommunications, she began mirroring their anxiety, asking questions that no 6-year-old should have to ask. Will mommy have to leave? Will I see her tomorrow? Jovi's instinct was to reassure her, but his answers were mechanical, lacking the warmth Mila needed. In moments like this, the strain of bureaucracy wasn't just on the parents. It seeped into the child, making every emotional misstep heavier. As the afternoon wore on, the conflict escalated. Yara tried to organize the paperwork herself, attempting to regain some control, but Jovi's insistence on double-checking everything turned cooperation into confrontation. A simple disagreement over where to put a form became a full argument, and in minutes, voices were raised, emotions frayed, and the weight of the looming USCIS deadline hung in the air like a storm cloud. Fans watching these moments can feel the tension. Every sigh, every pause, every frustrated glance builds suspense because the consequences are real and terrifying. Then came a temporary pause, a minor victory that offered a glimmer of hope. Jovi managed to locate one missing form, and Yara allowed herself a small smile. The first in hours. It was fleeting, but it reminded both of them and the audience that even in high-stakes situations, humans can find brief moments of triumph. But the relief was short-lived. As they celebrated this small win, another problem emerged. An unsigned page, buried in a stack of documents. Their progress felt like a mirage, a cruel tease that the safety of their family was always just out of reach. Yara's emotional landscape during this time was intense. She oscillated between hope, despair, anger, and guilt. Each new obstacle reignited fear that she would be separated from Mila. Her coping mechanism was silence at times, pacing at others, and at moments, tears. Jovi's coping mechanism was control. He tried to micromanage forms, timelines, and even Yara's behavior. But the more he pushed, the more Yara withdrew, creating a cycle of escalation neither of them could easily break. Behavioral patterns like these are common under prolonged stress: fight, flight, freeze. And watching it unfold on camera, the audience is placed in a delicate position of empathy, frustration, and suspense. As evening approached, the family tension didn't ease. Dinner was a quiet affair, punctuated by awkward glances and half-finished conversations. Mila tried to draw them into a game, but the parents' minds were elsewhere. Yara's anxiety was thick in the air, and Jovi's frustration made it impossible to focus on anything lighthearted. The psychological impact on both adults and child was visible. Every movement, every expression loaded with unspoken dread. It was as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next disaster to strike. Then came a minor cliffhanger. A notification on Yara's phone indicated that the lawyer had sent an urgent update. Both parents froze. The screen didn't reveal everything, just a line hinting that the forms might still be incomplete. Panic surged again, sharper than before, because now they knew their window was closing faster than they had anticipated. In that instant, every prior argument, every misstep, every tiny miscommunication gained more weight, threatening to tip the family into chaos. The clock was ticking, and each passing minute made the stakes feel unbearable, leaving viewers on edge with every second. Jovi attempted to salvage the moment with reassurance, but his words were stiff, lacking the empathy Yara needed to feel truly safe. Her reaction was predictable in the eyes of behavioral psychology: withdrawal followed by sharp emotional bursts. The patterns had formed over years, and under high-stakes pressure, they repeated with brutal efficiency. Fans familiar with the couple could anticipate the ebb and flow of tension, but the unpredictability of legal deadlines kept the drama raw and authentic. Mila's perspective added another layer of complexity. She wasn't just a witness. She was an emotional anchor. Her questions, her quiet observations, and her need for reassurance amplified the stakes. Every parental reaction shaped her perception of safety and stability. In moments when Yara retreated into fear or when Jovi became overly controlling, Mila internalized it, reflecting the emotional chaos in her own behavior. The dynamic became a three-way tension triangle, each point influencing the others in unpredictable ways. Small victories and defeats punctuated the evening. They managed to complete one segment of the paperwork, a temporary relief that brought a brief smile to Yara's face. But just as quickly, another error emerged, requiring immediate correction. Every minor progress was a tease, keeping both the family and the audience on a knife edge. The unpredictability of these moments, combined with genuine emotional stakes, created an escalating narrative that pulled viewers in deeper, refusing to let go. Yara's emotional reactions offered insight into trauma under pressure. Long-standing fears were amplified, compounded by Jovi's thoughtless comments and the looming possibility of deportation. Her responses, withdrawal, tears, and moments of confrontation were survival mechanisms. Jovi's attempts to regain control were equally human: frustration, impatience, and sharp directives. All attempts to protect what mattered most, but inadvertently adding to the tension. Watching them struggle, fans could see patterns that were simultaneously relatable and harrowing, a raw portrait of how stress distorts behavior and relationships. Then, another mini cliffhanger. An email notification hinted at a new complication. The lawyer mentioned something that wasn't fully explained, leaving Yara and Jovi grasping for understanding, hearts racing. The uncertainty wasn't just administrative, it was existential, threatening the family unit itself. Every second felt heavier than the last, as viewers were left wondering, could this family survive the mounting pressures? Or was this just the beginning of irreversible consequences? The morning brought no relief. Jovi sifted through the stack of forms again, scanning for errors, omissions, and missing signatures. Each page was a potential landmine. One slip could trigger the nightmare Yara feared most: deportation. The USCIS deadlines weren't just dates on a calendar, they were life or death markers for this family. Every misplaced signature, every incomplete form, every bureaucratic misstep amplified the tension in the house. Yara hovered, a bundle of anxiety, watching Jovi double-check what they had already reviewed twice. The air felt thick with fear and frustration, each movement deliberate, each word weighed. The past weeks of subtle marital friction now collided with real-world consequences, and the psychological pressure was crushing. From outside the house, social media buzzed. Fans were reacting with a mix of shock, empathy, and frustration. Comment threads speculated endlessly. Could Yara really be deported? Why hadn't the forms been completed sooner? What was Jovi thinking? Some sympathized with Yara, noting how invisible her stress had become over time, while others criticized the couple for mismanagement. The public attention added a layer of scrutiny that only intensified the couple's emotional strain. Watching your life play out on a screen while navigating a crisis is already destabilizing. And knowing millions are commenting and judging creates an extra layer of anxiety. Every notification, every trending topic, every fan theory became another point of pressure, making it hard for them to breathe, let alone act calmly. Amid the chaos, minor victories offered temporary relief. One form was completed correctly, signed, and ready to submit. Yara allowed herself a small smile, but Jovi's tense reminder that we still have 3 more pages to check quickly deflated any optimism. The pattern repeated. Progress, hope, error, panic. Behavioral patterns under prolonged stress became apparent. Yara alternated between hypervigilance and emotional withdrawal. Jovi oscillated between control and frustration. And Mila absorbed it all, sensing the fear even if she didn't fully understand it. The stakes weren't just bureaucratic, they were existential. And the psychological toll was visible in every line of tension on their faces. The clock ticked, and anxiety mounted. The lawyer called, voice clipped, words hurried. A missing signature was flagged, threatening to invalidate the entire batch of documents. Panic surged. Yara's hands shook, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Jovi snapped at her, not out of malice but from desperation. Each interaction felt like a chess move, where one mistake could cost everything. Fans watching this would feel the tension like a physical weight, knowing that bureaucracy, not a villain, was the enemy. Every time they thought they had cleared a hurdle, the system threw another challenge at them, keeping viewers glued to the edge of their seats. Meanwhile, online discussions turned speculative. Would the family be split? Could Yara stay if she appealed? What about Mila's schooling, her sense of stability? Commenters debated endlessly, creating a crowd-sourced drama that mirrored the family's internal tension. The uncertainty amplified feelings of helplessness and guilt for both Yara and Jovi, because in crises like these, external opinions often clash with personal judgment, leaving families second-guessing every decision. An unexpected complication arrived mid-afternoon. A document that had been assumed complete was flagged for missing notarization. The family scrambled to resolve it. Jovi's anxiety spiked, his patience thinning. Yara, exhausted from days of high-stress focus, snapped back with an emotional burst. Their reactions were textbook high-stress behavior, fight and freeze in alternating cycles, compounded by exhaustion and fear. The psychological pressure of potential deportation wasn't abstract, it was tangible, physically manifesting in tension, raised voices, and sleepless anticipation. Mila, caught in the crossfire, sought comfort in small distractions. A toy, a snack, a question. But every parental argument reminded her that the home felt unsafe. Watching this unfold, viewers get a stark sense of how bureaucratic missteps ripple beyond the forms themselves, touching every layer of a family's emotional ecosystem. It's a raw, human moment, and it's hard not to empathize even without knowing the intimate details. By evening, the paperwork was mostly organized, but the looming USCIS deadlines cast a long shadow. Jovi and Yara paused to take a breath, the kind of pause that feels both temporary and terrifying. Every resolved issue seemed to make room for the next potential catastrophe. Social media continued to buzz with speculation, empathy, and judgment. The public eye added fuel to the emotional fire as the family's struggle became a collective experience for fans who felt invested in their survival. The stakes kept climbing, and each passing hour made the next move feel like a gamble, with no room for error. As night fell, a minor breakthrough gave a sliver of hope. A lawyer's clarification suggested that if they submitted the remaining forms immediately, the family might avoid separation. Relief was fleeting, replaced quickly by tension because the window to act was closing fast. Yara's hands trembled as she gathered signatures. Jovi's voice was tight with controlled panic. This mix of hope and terror is what keeps audiences watching, moments of relief shadowed by the immediacy of risk. Fans continued to weigh in online, many expressing admiration for Yara's resilience and Jovi's determination. Others criticized perceived mismanagement, igniting debates that mirrored the couple's own internal conflict. The interplay between real-world legal chaos and public reaction created a dynamic almost as intense as the drama itself. Every decision, every reaction, and every emotional flare became fodder for speculation and engagement, keeping everyone invested in the story. Questions lingered for the audience. If you were in Yara's position, how would you handle the fear of being separated from your child? If you were Jovi, could you manage both the paperwork and the emotional fallout without breaking down? These questions aren't rhetorical. They mirror the tension the family is living, giving viewers a personal stake in the drama. By the time night truly set in, the household was exhausted, but not defeated. The legal threat remained, but small victories had prevented immediate disaster. Yara and Jovi's dynamic was tense but functional. Mila was still watching and learning how adults respond under pressure. Fans were left pondering outcomes, speculating about possible twists, and debating the couple's choices. The pressure of bureaucracy, public scrutiny, and parental responsibility converged into a high-stakes emotional roller coaster that left everyone, including viewers, holding their breath for what would happen next. Jovi's behavior in this chaos is classic high-stress impulsivity. He wants control over every step, yet pressure makes him snap in ways that create more problems than solutions. Forms get misplaced, reminders get shouted, and minor mistakes explode into arguments. His love for Yara is obvious, but in moments of fear, he resorts to frustration as a coping mechanism. Watching him, you notice a pattern. When the stakes rise, his control-tightening behavior increases, often colliding with Yara's emotional space. This is where small marital fissures widen into cracks you can't ignore. Yara, on the other hand, approaches crises differently. She internalizes the tension, her mind spinning through worst-case scenarios while outwardly appearing composed. Her resilience shows in small, quiet acts, checking paperwork multiple times, asking questions, holding Mila close, and absorbing Jovi's outbursts without retaliating. Yet this same resilience comes at a cost: emotional exhaustion, sleepless nights, and heightened anxiety that leaks into every interaction. The patterns become clearer when you watch their interactions. Jovi escalates when he feels powerless, Yara withdraws when she feels unseen, and Mila senses both, picking up on tension like a radar. Emotional triggers are everywhere: thoughtless comments, bureaucratic hiccups, reminders of past disappointments. It's fascinating, almost like watching a study of human stress in real time. Every minor misstep gets amplified under pressure. You begin to see why they can't just relax and get through it. Their coping mechanisms clash. Jovi believes action equals solution. Yara believes awareness and caution equals safety. The mismatch fuels emotional eruptions, often at the worst possible moments. And yet, every time they face a new challenge, you can't help but wonder if this family will actually survive the mounting pressure. Conflict triggers aren't just about paperwork, they reflect deeper insecurities. Jovi's fear of failure and public scrutiny interacts with Yara's past trauma and need for reassurance. When they argue over forms or deadlines, it isn't just bureaucracy, it's a window into unmet emotional needs. The audience sees Jovi's desire to protect his family collide with his inability to manage fear calmly. Yara's quiet endurance is a double-edged sword. It keeps her grounded, but it also allows frustrations to fester until they explode. Mila, caught in the middle, amplifies the emotional stakes. Every cry, every question about what's happening becomes a reminder that mistakes don't just affect paperwork, they touch the heart of a family. Small victories offer temporary relief, but they also create tension. A signed form might temporarily ease Jovi's anxiety, but the looming risk of the next deadline immediately resets the pressure. Yara's internal tension doesn't ease. She carries the emotional burden silently. Fans watching this can't help but feel that each moment of calm is a pause before the next storm. These behavioral patterns, control versus internalization, anxiety versus action, resilience versus emotional strain, define their day-to-day life under threat. Unexpected twists keep these patterns in motion. A late-night call from the lawyer, a missing signature, or even a sudden social media rumor ignites predictable reactions. Jovi bursts, Yara braces, and Mila worries. Observing this, it becomes clear that patterns aren't random. They are behavioral echoes of fear, love, and exhaustion. The audience sees cause and effect in real time, making it impossible to look away. Their interactions reveal a recurring question: will love and resilience be enough to withstand the weight of legal threats and emotional strain? Relationship psychology is embedded in every argument and compromise. Conflict escalates when unmet expectations collide with external pressures. Jovi expects immediate solutions. Yara seeks reassurance and caution. Neither is wrong, yet the mismatch fuels friction. Observing this, you begin to understand how prolonged stress can distort even strong bonds. Emotional resilience doesn't prevent conflict, it just changes the way it manifests. The audience witnesses how stress acts like a magnifying glass, enlarging every insecurity and fear. Mini cliffhangers appear in subtle moments: a tense look during a form review, a quiet sigh from Yara, a sudden snap from Jovi. Each moment leaves viewers questioning what will happen next. Will Yara maintain her composure? Or will exhaustion push her toward breaking point? Will Jovi regain calm? Or will his impulsivity create irreversible damage? Patterns repeat, yet outcomes remain uncertain, keeping suspense alive. Fans online analyze these behaviors endlessly. Some cheer for Yara's steadiness, others criticize Jovi's reactive style. It's almost like a live case study of stress, love, and human behavior. Every viewer begins projecting themselves into the situation. How would you act if your child and spouse were under constant threat? How would you manage fear without letting it control your actions? These questions drive engagement, keeping audiences invested in every decision, every reaction. By mid-segment, a small breakthrough occurs. Jovi acknowledges a misstep and attempts a more measured approach. Yara recognizes his effort and offers cautious support. It's temporary, but it illustrates a behavioral pattern of recovery after escalation, a moment that reassures viewers while reminding them the next crisis is always looming. Even with small wins, the underlying tension never fully disappears, and you can't help but watch to see if Yara and Jovi will finally find a balance before everything collapses. The segment ends on a psychological pivot. Patterns are clear, stakes are high, and the emotional cost is real. Viewers are left contemplating the fragility of love under pressure, the unpredictability of human behavior, and the terrifying weight of bureaucratic threats. Every choice, reaction, and emotional burst is both a reflection of love and a test of endurance, making it impossible to predict whether the family will survive unscathed. The airport was a storm of tension the moment they arrived. Yara clutched Mila's hand tightly, her knuckles white, her heart racing with every passing second. Jovi, normally a tower of forceful confidence, moved almost robotically, double-checking documents, pacing, muttering to himself, eyes darting between counters and security lines. The announcement board flickered like a warning signal. Every flight delay or gate change felt like a countdown to disaster. Could one missing signature really pull this family apart forever? The answer felt terrifyingly real as they approached the USCIS officer. Yara's anxiety wasn't just about leaving, it was about losing control over her daughter's world. She had imagined this moment countless times. What if Mila cried for her? What if she couldn't return? Jovi tried to speak words of reassurance, but they sounded hollow, even to him. His mind was spinning with potential outcomes, worst-case scenarios, every bureaucratic misstep he could recall from weeks of preparation. One small error in the paperwork could turn hope into heartbreak. And at that moment, the world around them seemed deaf to their panic. The line moved slowly. Each step forward was agony. Yara's breathing became shallow. Mila tugged at her sleeve, sensing the tension but not understanding it. Jovi bent down, speaking gently, trying to anchor them both with calm he didn't entirely feel. His impulsivity, which had caused arguments earlier, now served as hyper-focused vigilance. He triple-checked the envelope, verified signatures, asked questions no one wanted to answer. Yet even this effort couldn't erase the fear in Yara's eyes. Just when it seemed like the pressure might crush them, the officer called their name. Yara's pulse spiked. Jovi moved in front protectively, shielding her from the swarm of other travelers, his jaw tight with nervous determination. Every eye in the terminal felt like judgment. Every phone camera a reminder that millions might be watching. The officer examined the documents, flipped pages, checked stamps. Yara held her breath, praying silently. This was the moment that could define everything. Separate families, futures, and lives resting on a few sheets of paper. A minor victory arrived unexpectedly. One form that had been missing earlier was finally accounted for. Relief flooded Jovi, his shoulders relaxing just a fraction, his voice softening when he reassured Yara. She exhaled slowly, eyes glistening with unshed tears. For a heartbeat, hope seemed tangible. But the tension didn't vanish. The officer asked a clarifying question, a detail that made both Jovi and Yara hesitate, hearts pounding as the possibility of denial resurfaced. The dance between fear and relief played out in real time, every reaction magnified by the stakes. Mila's presence amplified every emotion. She clung to her mother, sensing that this was bigger than herself, that her family could fracture if something went wrong. The audience could feel the stakes more sharply, because children make abstract threats concrete. Jovi tried to smile at her, but the edges of his panic leaked through. Yara whispered soft reassurances, but internally, she struggled to stay grounded, oscillating between courage and dread. The minor setback arrived quickly. A stamp discrepancy required an extra verification. It wasn't catastrophic, but it was enough to reignite tension. Jovi's impulses threatened to take over again. He wanted to argue, demand answers, move faster, but Yara's calm reasoning nudged him into patience. Her resilience became a stabilizing force in the chaos, demonstrating how behavioral patterns shift when love and necessity collide. The audience sees the struggle between action and patience, urgency and composure, as a defining moment for the family. Social media chatter mirrored the terminal's tension. Fans speculated, theorized, and empathized, creating a virtual echo of the real-world anxiety. Discussions focused on what the outcome might mean for Mila, for family unity, and for the couple's future. The psychological pressure wasn't just in the airport, it extended to anyone following the story. Viewers began imagining themselves in the same situation. The helplessness, the fear, the relentless uncertainty. Finally, the officer returned. The stamp went through, signatures verified, minor discrepancies explained. The family's relief was tangible, but cautious. Every hug and whispered reassurance carried the weight of weeks of fear and tension. Jovi wrapped Mila in his arms, then Yara, and for a brief moment, the airport noise faded, leaving only the fragile bubble of safety and unity. This wasn't the end of their challenges, but it was a victory born from vigilance, patience, and resilience. Even as they walked away, hearts still racing, the audience can't help but wonder what the next storm will look like and whether this family's fragile peace can hold. The emotional intensity of the day reinforced the patterns established over weeks. Jovi's impulses, Yara's steadfastness, and the interplay of fear and hope under extreme pressure. Each decision, reaction, and behavioral nuance contributed to the outcome. The audience witnessed the profound emotional weight of bureaucratic uncertainty, how small victories are magnified, and how setbacks can threaten even the strongest bonds. As they exited the airport, Mila clinging to Yara, Jovi holding documents tightly, the tension didn't fully dissipate. This moment of triumph carried a new layer of awareness. The family could face future challenges at any moment, and their ability to cope would determine whether resilience or stress dominates. Fans are left considering not only the legal stakes, but the emotional endurance of every person involved. The ultimate takeaway? Love alone isn't enough to navigate life's legal and emotional storms, but determination, adaptability, and emotional intelligence can make the difference between heartbreak and hope. The segment closes on an unspoken question. How will this family handle the next wave of pressure? And will the lessons learned today be enough to protect them tomorrow? Every choice, every reaction, and every emotional beat is a reminder that life under extreme scrutiny is unpredictable. And the human heart, while resilient, can only withstand so much before it's tested again. The day ended, but the weight of it didn't. Yara sat on the couch, Mila curled beside her, both staring at the silence that filled the apartment. Jovi's presence was heavy in the room, a mixture of relief and lingering tension. The minor victories at the airport had saved them, yes, but the emotional toll was undeniable. Weeks of anxiety, miscommunication, and stress had left visible marks on everyone. It wasn't just about paperwork or stamps anymore. It was about trust, understanding, and the delicate balance of family life under constant pressure. Yara's thoughts swirled with questions she couldn't fully answer. Could she ever feel secure again? How much of their relationship had survived the constant fear of separation? She replayed Jovi's impulses, his moments of frustration, alongside his attempts to protect her. There was love in his actions, but it was often wrapped in stress-driven behavior that left her anxious. She realized that even the strongest intentions could falter when emotional patterns and unresolved trauma collided. Jovi, for his part, reflected on his own choices. The airport incident had highlighted his impulsivity and need for control. Each document he had triple-checked, each interaction with officers, had been an attempt to contain chaos. Yet, he understood now that controlling outcomes wasn't enough. Emotional support, empathy, and patient problem-solving mattered just as much, if not more. The stakes weren't simply legal. They were deeply human, involving hearts, trust, and the fragile sense of security that every family needs. Mila, too, was affected in ways adults often overlook. Even as a child, she sensed the tension, the fear, and the relief that came in uneven waves. Her world had been shaken by uncertainty, and her parents' emotional patterns directly influenced her sense of safety. Viewers could see how children absorb the emotional climate of their parents, how even minor administrative errors can ripple into a child's daily experience. It's a reminder that family decisions have layers far beyond what meets the eye. The audience can learn a lot from this episode about coping under pressure. Yara's resilience, even when fear threatened to overwhelm her, shows the power of emotional grounding. Simple strategies, taking measured breaths, focusing on small, achievable steps, and maintaining open communication can transform moments of panic into actions that protect rather than fragment a family. At the same time, Jovi's mistakes remind viewers to recognize impulsive reactions as red flags, not just for relationships, but for how stress can cloud judgment. Awareness and self-reflection can prevent escalation before it spirals out of control. This story also highlights the importance of empathy. Watching each parent struggle to balance their own fear with their responsibility toward Mila offers a powerful lesson in relational mindfulness. Understanding that behavior often comes from fear, stress, or past trauma allows viewers to see conflicts more clearly without oversimplifying them. It isn't about who's right or wrong, it's about patterns, emotional triggers, and how humans respond under extreme pressure. Even as relief settled in, unresolved tension lingered. Yara's anxiety wasn't gone. Jovi's control impulses weren't erased. Questions remained. How would the next USCIS check-in go? Would legal paperwork remain a source of stress? How would their emotional patterns continue to affect each other and Mila? Every answer uncovered in this episode raised another question, keeping viewers on edge and invested. Social media chatter reflected these same unresolved tensions. Fans speculated about upcoming moves, debated who handled stress better, and empathized with the family's emotional journey. The conversation wasn't just about a single moment of crisis, it was about understanding human behavior, learning from mistakes, and recognizing how bureaucratic pressures amplify relational stress. It reminded audiences that reality TV drama is more than spectacle, it's a mirror for life's challenges, fears, and triumphs under pressure. For viewers looking for practical takeaways, there's a clear message. Vigilance and preparation matter, but so do emotional awareness and resilience. Recognize your own triggers, validate your partner's fears, and work together to navigate uncertainty. Even in high-stakes situations, small gestures of patience and reassurance can prevent minor missteps from becoming catastrophic. The story of Yara and Jovi is a case study in how external pressures collide with personal patterns and how families survive, or falter, depending on how they respond. And yet, even with lessons learned, the story isn't finished. Unresolved legal questions, lingering emotional tensions, and the ever-present possibility of new crises make the next chapter unpredictable. Will the family finally find a sustainable rhythm, or will new obstacles emerge? Will Yara's resilience continue to hold, or will cumulative stress force a hard decision? Jovi's next moves could either stabilize or destabilize the fragile balance they fought to protect. The unresolved stakes hang heavy, leaving viewers wondering what comes next for this family when the paperwork ends but the emotional journey continues. One thing is clear. The episode closes not with an ending, but with a question. How far can love stretch under relentless pressure? And how much can a family endure before it's tested again? Fans are left waiting, imagining the fallout, anticipating the next twist, and reflecting on what they would do in the same situation. Every moment of tension, every behavioral nuance, and every small victory or setback becomes a lesson about resilience, awareness, and the raw unpredictability of human life. The story sets up the next video perfectly. Legal fallout, emotional reckonings, and new challenges are all on the horizon. Viewers are left curious, anxious, and emotionally invested, ready to return to see how Yara, Jovi, and Mila navigate the next wave of drama. Every decision, every pattern, and every reaction is a setup for what comes next, making the next episode an inevitable must-watch. Even now, as the credits would roll in any show, the real story is far from over, and the audience can't help but ask, will this family survive what's coming next, or will the next twist finally push them to the breaking point? This segment reinforces the emotional takeaways, the behavioral lessons, and the ongoing suspense while leaving fans with an irresistible reason to stay tuned for the next chapter in Yara and Jovi's story.